He completed their career Grand Slam. He won at Pebble. He won the Irish Open. He won the Players. The centerpiece of the European Ryder Cup team, won his 7th Harry Vardon Trophy on the DP World Tour. But tonight, if Team Rory does not win the Optum Golf Channel games, I think it's fair to say the grade for his season, B, B minus. Rory, isn't that fair?
I actually don't think that's fair, Gary, but I'm happy to hear the argument from your side.
I'll make no argument. It's one of the most magical, personal, historic seasons ever. But let's start with tonight in this event.
Yep.
I know you're an observer of all sports, and so I'm curious as to why you think this format, the way it's constructed, the way you guys are going to execute this, why do you think this will work?
Yeah, so as you said, I think we're trying to take from a few different sports here. So you think of the home run derby in baseball, the 3-point contest in basketball, and the combine in the NFL. I think it's a way for us to showcase our skills in a different environment. I think sometimes when we play tournament golf, I don't always know if the viewer at home really appreciates just the skill level of the top guys that play professional golf. So I think to be in an environment like this where you're doing target challenges and time challenges and really testing all aspects of the game, but in a different way, it might give the viewer a different appreciation for just how good all these guys are, but then also it's going to be fun for us. It's fun for us to be put in a different environment, be told to hit certain shots, different trajectories, hit shots at certain speeds. So I think that's going to be the fun part, and hopefully, I know all the players are excited about it, so hopefully it resonates with everyone at home.
Rory, you said time. You like to get on with it, but this is time crunch. You're being timed. What do you think is the key to precision and being under the pressure of time?
Yeah, I would say we even with with TGL, we tried to bring a shot clock in there.
Yep.
It's speed of decision making at the end of the day, I think, and it's commitment to the shot that you want to hit. I think sometimes when professional golfers struggle the most is when they're presented with so many different options and so many choices, and they have so much time to think about what they want to do. I think in some ways having less time, it takes the choice paradox out of your hands, and you sort of really have to rely on your first instinct, which I'd say most of us would do well with relying on our first instinct when we're on the golf course.
Rory, when we started, I mentioned all these seminal experiences / accomplishments that you put together this year. But I also know that you've worked very hard to not look at events as pass, fail. They're outcomes. But with outcomes comes, how do you accept outcomes? How have you gotten better considering the things that you got so close to over the last couple of years, and then obviously what you did this year, primarily Augusta National, to get to a place where acceptance is something you can not only say and say it well, but live with it?
Yeah, I think the only way to get to that point of acceptance of the outcome, no matter what happens, is you have to go through it. And I think I've lived that, whether it be the close calls that I've had, even just recently, St Andrews in 22, LACC in 23, Pinehurst in 24. And I think the thing that I learned from those, I talked about this even going into the Masters this year. I call them heartbreaks. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but disappointments. And you wake up the next day on that Monday morning and you realize that life goes on, and maybe, if you can look at the positives and try to learn from the negatives, that, you can go on and use that to your advantage. And I think, the word resilience gets thrown around a lot, but I think all resilience is the ability to have a short memory and the ability to have hope for the future. And that's what I've had. I've been able to forget about my the previous disappointments, and then I've always been the eternal optimist, and I've always had hope that my day would come and that I would achieve what I wanted to achieve. And it's been sort of, people have put that resilience narrative around what I've done. And yeah, I would say I've been resilient from that, but it's not, I wouldn't say I'm the mentally strongest person in the world, but I am the most optimistic. And I get that from my dad, Jerry. And, I always believe that good things are going to happen. And I feel like the one thing I have done well is I've always tried to be the eternal optimist.
I don't know if you've seen, there's a 17-minute mashup on YouTube of every shot from the final round of the Masters. I watched it twice over the last couple days. There's no commentary. So it's just the boom mics and 17 minutes from shot to shot with some reacts, and then they move on. And it's not like I forgot anything. But I'm prefacing this question by bringing that up because do you think that there are 2 or 3 indelible moments, and it could have been the swings, it could have been the moments before or after, that will stand up forever for you?
Yeah, I think there are. There's a few moments within that round that stand out. I think even the massive swing in the first few holes. So if you think about, I was 2 ahead standing on the first tee. I was 1 behind standing on the 3rd tee. I was 1 ahead standing on the 4th tee, and then I was 3 ahead standing on the 5th tee. So just that, from being 2 ahead to 1 behind to 3 ahead, like just that massive swing. And, the 2 birdies on 3 and 4, if I don't, especially on 3, I think if I don't make that birdie on the 3rd hole on Sunday, I honestly don't think I go on to win. That was a huge moment in that round, just to get me back from what a tough start it had been. And then there's a few others. I mean, the shot on 7, and then again with the advantage of hindsight, I probably, it's probably a shot I shouldn't have taken on, but in the moment, I felt like it was one that I could. I felt like it was a shot I could get on the green and somehow give myself a chance for birdie. But I think my big moments came in sort of, the birdie on 3 and 4, the birdie on 9 and 10. I talk about this story a lot. Bryson and I were very close in terms of like who was going to go first or who was going to putt first. Ultimately, it was decided that I would putt first and I was away. I held that putt for birdie. Bryson missed his putt for birdie, and I felt like that was just a big momentum swing in the round as well. Going into the back 9, just having birdie the 9th hole and feeling good about myself. And then obviously what happened on 13 and 14. It was a round with so many swings and emotions and such a roller coaster. But I'd say one of the most underrated, and then you talk about the shots in 15 and 17, but I think the most underrated shot of the whole day was my tee shot into 16. That was that wasn't the traditional Sunday hole location. And I was worried about that shot all day. I felt like that was going to be a pivotal point in the tournament. Obviously paying homage to Jack's win in 1975, the 50th anniversary. But for whatever reason, that pin up on that top right shelf on 16, I was sort of worried or uneasy about it all day, and I made one of my best swings into that hole, a 3/4 8 iron. I didn't end up making the birdie, but that was one of the best swings of the day after what had happened on 15. And yeah, like there's I could sit and talk to you about that round of golf for the next 2 hours. I know we don't have that time, but there's so many things I'll remember about that day. But it's when I look back on my career, I don't think I'll have a more memorable round of golf than that one.
You provided one of, if not the most memorable round of golf for millions of people, which is amazing. And only you can say what you said about the 3rd hole. But that ball ran up the ridge. You were a yard to a yard and a half from that ball climbing onto the green off the tee. And then it collected back down into one of the most devilish little second shots that you had to hit. And then you're above the hole and you sneak that in. And look, like you said, we could talk about it for hours. Let me ask you about Scheffler, the guy who will be the captain of the other team tonight. I know that you have great, affection for him and admiration as well. What do you think is his most valuable trait?
I think his most valuable trait is his indifference he's indifferent to celebrity, I guess would be the easy way to say it. He wants to be a golfer. He does very little outside of his realm. He lives what from the outside looks like a very simple life. He has his family and he has golf, and he's very adamant about that. I think when you get into this position in the world of golf or in sport, you are pulled in so many different directions, and I think Scottie has been so disciplined in saying, no, this is what I want to do and this is what I want to focus on. And then I think because of that, you can see that in his results and the consistency of his results. So I think he's got a great structure around him. He's got a great family, obviously. But then on the golf course, he just doesn't make mistakes. He knows that, if you're going to play 72 holes, he's not going to make many mistakes, and you're going to have to beat him. And to beat him, you're going to have to take on some risk. And I think what happens is people, and I've found this as well playing with Scottie, you feel like you have to take on more risk to beat him because you just feel like he's not going to make a mistake. And, if you look at the stats on the PGA Tour, he leads in a lot of different statistical categories, but one of the ones that he's high up on is bogey avoidance. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of his game.
I think Jack is the better comp to the point you just made. And I get the whole Tiger thing because of the things that he's done, stats and all that. Jack will tell you, and you know this because you spent so much time with him, if you're good enough, consistent enough, you put pressure on the others to take stuff on that they're either not comfortable doing or because they feel they have to because they know you're not going to make a blunder, which gets me to this. The things that you still want to do, I know that there are particular things that you want to do. I think winning a U.S. Open, another one, is vitally important because of you win it early, then you kind of had this drifting period, and then you started to build again. And I asked you the question at Oakmont about where the record has come from over the last 5 years, and you invoked something I thought was interesting. You said it's partly ego-driven. I know that I can be one of the best U.S. Open players. So at Shinnecock, you love that part of the world. Scheffler, coincidentally, would be going for their career Grand Slam. Give me a thought about the priority of another U.S. Open.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think I won a U.S. Open very early on in my career that, in all honesty, felt more like a PGA championship in the way the setup was. I won with 16 under par. I did win by a lot, but it was sort of soft that week in DC, and I would love to win a U.S. Open in what we would consider typical U.S. Open conditions. I think just to prove to myself that I can do it. I was obviously very close at LACC. It was very close at Pinehurst, and Shinnecock will provide another example of what we would call typical U.S. Open conditions. So, as you said, I love golf. Out east in Long Island, and Shinnecock's one of my favorite golf clubs in the world, one of my favorite golf courses in the world. Obviously, that's where Scottie will be going for his career Grand Slam. So, if we both play well at that tournament, that I hope we both do, then we could be in for one of the more exciting golf tournaments of 2026. But US, I've won a couple of PGAs. I'd love to win a couple of US Opens. Another Open Championship is something, look, the major championships are so important. And now that I've finally gotten over that hump of winning my fifth one, I want to sort of keep that run going. But as you say, Shinnecock in whatever that is, 9 or 10 months time would, or 8 months' time is going to be very exciting.
All right, I know that Courtney Holt, when she says wrap, I don't normally defy her. We're going to do this in 60 seconds. 5 questions for Rory McIlroy to go. The favorite golf hole you played this year? The favorite hole, doesn't have to be competitive golf. What's the favorite golf hole you played this year?
Favorite golf hole I have played this year? The 7th hole at Victoria Golf Club in Melbourne.
Excellent. All right, the sporting event in America you've never been to that you want to go to?
The Super Bowl.
Okay, the show that you and Eric are binging right now?
We're binging 2 different things, but I'm binging Landman.
Very good. All right, the best book you read this year?
The Art of Spending Money.
And lastly, the wine you will serve at the Champions Dinner has been chosen, and what's the label?
Most likely 1990 Chateau Lafite Rothschild. It's the wine that she and Laurie very kindly brought back to the rental house on the Sunday night of Augusta.